Hey, future business leaders, Dr. Michael Young here. We're moving on to our next module. We are getting into some of the nitty-gritty about business ownership in this particular module. One point of note, we have skipped chapter 4. I'm sorry, we jumped straight to chapter 5. So module 4 is actually covering chapter 5. So we have three major forms of business ownership. You may be familiar with some of these. I know from reading your discussions that some of you are coming from business families. That's good. That's great. Some of you even plan to take over your family business. Hey, that's great. That's wonderful. Many of small businesses are sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is a business owned and usually managed by one person or often a family. Okay, with a founder at the center of the business, and then you have relatives that also help with the business. Partnership, this is often consulting firms, oftentimes legal firms, even some other types of businesses. Those are very common in those businesses, but will form a partnership in which you have two or more owners. And then finally, you have corporations. Corporations is it's like a fake person. It's like a legal person that's been set up, and it has limited liability that separates it from its owner. Here's an interesting fact. Although corporations make up only 20% of all business forms in the United States, they earn 81% of total receipts. Sole proprietorships, those small businesses, are much more common. Kind of makes sense, right? Those are those small family businesses that have just one person or a family, and many or most of the businesses we see around here in the Coral Valley are sole proprietorships, and so they're more common, but they tend to be much smaller. Main reason that sole proprietorships are easier is because they're easy to start. You don't really need to do anything special to start a sole proprietorship, this type of business. You get to be completely your own boss. There are no other partners, no other owners. There's private ownership. You can leave a legacy. Maybe some of your family members, I know some of our classmates in here, some of our future business leaders are planning to take over the family business, and so that means that the family can have some sort of a legacy. You get to keep all of the money. Excuse me. Yeah, we're going to see whenever we get into certain types of partnerships and corporations, there's something called double taxation. And so there's no special taxes with the sole proprietorship. So this is the reason that these tend to be the most popular form of business ownership, because they're just easier. However, not everything is rosy with sole proprietorships. There are also some disadvantages. Number one is unlimited liability. The business and the owner are one and the same. That means if the business incurs losses, then the owner is personally responsible for those losses. So they can come and take your personal assets if your business is not doing well. Also, limited financial resources. You're pretty much limited by your own, what you can raise yourself and what you can borrow from other people. You can't pull resources from other owners like you can in the other forms of business. Management difficulties. It's a one-man show oftentimes, and there's no specialization, division of labor among the different tasks and roles within the business, and this can cause problems. It can take overwhelming time commitment. I happen to have a good friend who has his own business. It's a man, and he is constantly complaining about how he has no time for himself, and he can never leave work. He follows his home every day. And he never really gets time off. There are very few fringe benefits. You have to, if you want to take vacation, you have to take vacation. If you want insurance, you have to buy insurance. The growth is limited, again, because of the one-man show, the lack of professional partnerships and functions, and also limited lifespan. Although you would like to have business remain in a family and be passed on. Unless there is someone willing to do that, the business will cease to exist with the original owner. This is a big one. Being your own boss. I've heard it said that if you are working for yourself, you're working for the toughest boss in the whole world. Working for yourself can be very, very demanding. So if you have something like a restaurant or a bar, it means making a major time commitment to run the business, looking for new customers, and in this day and age, finding employees. So you got to think about this. If you are a sole proprietor and starting your own business, what would you do if you wanted to take a week's vacation? Would you do it? I mean, we see businesses around here sometimes that will say, we're going to take off, we're going to shut down for a week. Causes some problems. You might lose some customers. Next type of business ownership structure we'll talk about is partnership. We got two types here. We got a general partnership, which all owners are kind of assuming liabilities for businesses and debts. They may not put in the same amount of money, but they have equal responsibilities in running the business as well as financing the business, and then also a share of the profits. Limited partnership is a partnership with one or more general partners and has at least one or possibly more limited partners. And a limited partner is someone who just puts up money but is not really involved in operating the business. Yeah, so this gives us a definition of the different types of partners for a partnership. You've got a general partner who has unlimited liability and is active in the management and running the company. As I mentioned before, you can have a limited partner. This is someone who puts up money but doesn't have any management responsibility, is not responsible for running the money, and is also not responsible for liabilities or losses beyond what they put up. Typically, limited partners have a fixed profit share. They're almost like a lender. And of course, when we say limited liability, you may have seen LLP or LLC. We're going to talk about what those definitions mean. Limited liability partnership, limited liability corporation. It means that the corporation itself and either the partners or the owners of the partnership or the corporation are limited. Okay? They have limited liability. It means if the business goes bankrupt and owes money that it can't pay back, the partners or the owners of the corporation are not responsible personally for those losses. Some advantages of partnerships: they have more financial resources because you have more than one manager. It makes your management pool richer, your expertise richer. You can have complementary skills and knowledge. Typically, they can survive longer. There are no special taxes with partnerships. One of the things that we're going to talk about in just a moment is very important if you are going to form a partnership, to choose your partner very carefully. There are numerous examples of business partners coming to disagreement. It's, to use the analogy of a marriage, you're going into an agreement with this person, and it assumes a lot of trust. You need to know this person's personality, and if you don't choose your partner carefully, it can cause a lot of grief. Some of the disadvantages of partnerships: unless it's a limited liability partnership, which is a special kind, you have unlimited liability, you have to divide the profits, and very, very often, more often than not, there are disagreements among the partners that have to be resolved one way or another. Next type of business ownership is corporation. Most corporations, the big corporations that we're familiar with, are the conventional type, sometimes called a C corporation. This is a state-chartered legal entity with authority to act and have liability separate from its owners and its stockholders. In order to form a corporation in West Virginia, to have a West Virginia Incorporated Corporation, you would need to file the appropriate papers with the state of West Virginia. And here's another interesting fact. Most of the most large corporations are formed in Delaware because Delaware happens to have the most well-developed corporate law in the United States. Some advantages of having a corporate form. Biggest one, limited liability. This protects your own personal assets. So if you're a corporation, if you're an owner in the corporation goes broke, that's it. The corporation can declare bankruptcy. You would lose all of your ownership assets and everything, as that would go to creditors, but they couldn't come and take your personal assets. Corporations have the ability to raise much more money for investment. Especially if you have public ownership. If you do an IPO, an initial public offering, then you've opened up the ownership to anybody, the public. That's reason we call them public firms. And so this vastly increases the amount of money that you can raise for investment. Next one is size. This has to do with this one. Much larger. They're going to have better management teams as they become larger. You can have someone that's specializing. You can have whole divisions of accounting and marketing and engineering and operations or whatever. Whereas with sole proprietorships, oftentimes that's much more loosely organized, and you might have one person that's doing several different things. Theoretically, a corporation can live forever. No end to its life. Just the owners change, but the corporation change. Hire and fire managers. But it can go on forever. Ease of ownership, buy and share stock, buy and share shares of ownership in the corporation. Typically, it's easier to attract talented employees, and there's a separation of ownership for management, which has some benefits, but also has some disadvantages. One of the reasons that corporations are much less common, especially for small businesses, is because of the cost, the paperwork, the red tape of setting up this form. You have to get attorneys involved, and it can be quite cumbersome. Double taxation. You may have heard of this before. Whenever you have a corporation, the corporation pays taxes, and then whenever the profits are distributed among the owners in the form of dividends or capital gains, that's taxed again. So that's double taxation. So you actually have two tax returns. The size can be good, size can be bad. There are examples in business literature of corporations that became too large. As they became too large, they became ineffective, and this caused their eventual lack of performance and maybe even downfall or breaking up so that they could be run more effectively. There's difficulty of termination. If you want to end a corporation, it's quite hard to do, because now you have all of these owners. Depending on how many are involved, you have to buy them out, and so that's another problem. Finally, there could be possible conflict with stockholders and board of directors and managers. They don't have managers here, but I would actually put in managers as well, because, now you've got, it's not just one person making decisions. It's one person trying to make decisions, the manager, but has to answer to the board of directors, and the board of directors has to answer to the shareholders. This cumbersome decision process can be a disadvantage. Here's a common graph that we often use in management, in management research actually. It's a particular type of relationship called an agency relationship, because technically, when you think about it, the officers and the managers and the employees are the agents of the owners. but they're separate. So you've got these owners that are wanting things to be done by the employees, and so this is a separation of the ownership and control of the corporation. Boards of directors are an intermediary in this process, which are a tool that the owners use to help them control and manage the employees by hiring and firing and rewarding the top managers, actually. So you have, this is the ownership role. The owners have the ownership role. The officers, the top officers, have the executive role. And a board of directors is a tool that's used by the owners to help them achieve that function. All right, then let's move right along. Whenever corporations expand, there's a big topic in strategic management on mergers and acquisitions. Merger is when two companies get together to form one company. Acquisition is when one company buys another company, acquires another company. Different types of mergers and acquisitions. Oftentimes we talk about vertical versus horizontal versus conglomerate. These two we would call related mergers. Vertical mergers and horizontal mergers are mergers between companies that are in related businesses. Vertical are the joining of two companies at different stages of a related business. I like to say different stages in the production process of the same product. For example, suppose you have raw material producer that produces raw materials that's made into some product, manufacturer, and then you have some sort of sales, wholesale, or retail operation. So ding, ding, ding. Think of them as moving this way. That's a vertical operation. So if the manufacturer would buy the distributor, that would be a vertical operation. Whenever Walt Disney bought ABC TV, that was considered to be a vertical merger because Disney was producing the content, the movies, the TV shows, blah, blah, blah. ABC had the TV stations, and so that was a vertical merger. The horizontal merger now is the same stage of the production process of the same or very similar product. So these often get a lot of scrutiny by the FTC because they don't want to limit competition. They want to prevent monopolies. And so, for example, if, let's say, KFC, there's a company called Yum Brands that bought three companies, KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. That is definitely a horizontal merger because they're in the same stage of the production process, same product, fast food. And then finally, we have a conglomerate merger. This would be two companies forming that are in completely different and unrelated industries. Speaking of Disney again, here's an example of a merger, and I want you to tell me, I want you to think about this. Is this a horizontal, a vertical, or a conglomerate merger? 2019, Walt Disney, purchased the film and TV assets held by 21st Century Fox for more than $71 billion, giving the entertainment giant the rights to valuable properties like The Simpsons. So now think about this. Is this a vertical merger? Is it a conglomerate merger? Or is it a horizontal merger? I would say it's a horizontal merger because they're both entertainment companies, they're both producing content, and they're in the same industry, right? So this would be an example of a horizontal merger. The next type of ownership structure we're going to talk about is franchises. A franchise agreement, that's where you have this larger organization. Many fast food restaurants, for example, are owned as franchises. That is, you might have a McDonald's, or a big one is Dairy Queen, in which you've got the big organization, the main organization, McDonald's or the Dairy Queen organization, and they get a franchisor, a franchisee, an owner, a local owner. For example, I happen to know the local owner of the Dairy Queen in Eleanor, West Virginia, and that is a franchise. It's owned by a local guy, but of course they have to get all of their products, and they get advice from the main Dairy Queen organization. These can be formed as sole proprietorships, partnerships, or corporations. Lots of them in the United States. Lots of franchises. 733,000 franchises in the United States, creating 7.6 million jobs. Lots of advantages to franchises. Lots of people, when they get into a business, may want to go into a franchise because it's as though they have a cookbook recipe for how to do it. You get a lot of management and marketing assistance. You get a nationally recognized name with national advertising. You also have somewhat personal ownership, and you have financial advice and assistance coming from the main franchise organization. This means that they have a lower rate of failure. However, there are disadvantages to franchises. There are larger startup costs. You got to pay to buy into a franchise. You have to pay for initial startup costs, and it varies from franchise to franchise, from operation to operation, but it can be quite substantial. You have to share your profit. You have to follow what the management wants you to do for the main franchise organization. So it's not like you're completely your own boss. There are coattail effects, which can be bad. Coattail effects means that whatever happens at other franchises affects you. If the other Dairy Queens start doing badly, they get a bad reputation, this is going to affect on you. You're riding on the coattails of the main franchise, and so you are subject to the whims of how people feel about things that are not under your control. There are restrictions on selling, and then there are also fraudulent franchisors. There are people that, will try to water down, for example, let's go back to the Dairy Queen example, put a lower quality hot dog into their footlong hot dogs or something like that, or maybe do things that are not quite right, and that is diluting the value of all of the franchises, including the one that you might happen to have. Yeah, franchises have gone global. Even small franchises are gone global. If you travel much outside the United States, you'll know that you can see McDonald's and KFC everywhere. There have been a few foreign franchises that have also come to the United States. I chuckled because I was thinking of a particular one, a Jollibee restaurant, which is a Filipino brand. They tried to franchise in the United States, didn't turn out to be too effective. They offer the same advantages as the U.S., convenience, predictable level of service and quality. Adapting products and brand names to different countries creates challenges. I know that when I traveled around Asia, it was always a relief to me to see a KFC or a McDonald's. Not that I don't love local food, but occasionally you just want to go someplace and get something that you know what you're going to get. KFC is very famous, one of the most, oddly enough, you think of that as being a kind of maybe a niche market in the United States for fried chicken as opposed to hamburgers, but at least in places like China, they're much more popular. KFC is more popular than it is McDonald's. Here are the highest performing franchises in the United States: McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Sonic Drive-In, Taco Bell, UPS Store. I didn't know about that one. Culver's, I'm not sure what that one is. Planet Fitness, we got a new one in Hayes Valley. Great Clips, I had my haircut there before. Jersey Mike Subs, I heard there's a new one coming in Putnam County. I don't know if it's true or not. That's what I heard. And then 7-Eleven. Last type of business ownership we're going to talk about is a cooperative. or a co-op. Co-op is a business zone controlled by the people who use its product. And this is a way for them to increase their bargaining power, really. They get together and they buy larger quantities, and then they're able to sell at lower cost to the members. So they pool their resources from each member. So that's it. I hope you found this useful. Next module, we'll actually be talking about starting small businesses, some of the challenges that are faced by fledgling entrepreneurs. So until then, keep studying and see you next time.